Chapter 5. Arent Van Corlaer and Others. Arent Van Corlaer settled in White Creek in 1709 at the age of 19. He was not the first to locate within the town, as indeed a previous chapter has made clear, but he was the first of our settlers whom we can call by name or give a detailed account of. At the time of his coming, the place names so familiar to us today, such as Cambridge, White Creek, Hoosick, etc., were unheard of, and the community center which gave its name to the locality was Sandcroix. Van Corlaer settled in that part of the Sandcroix neighborhood which fell in the town of White Creek, Washington County, towards the year 1800, when town and county lines were established. Van Corlaer came to Sandcroix to engage in the fur trade, and brought with him Adam Vrooman, the experienced trader and son of Bartle Vrooman of Old Saratoga. In 1711 he built the trading post, standing today but with little change, on a terrace just under the summit of Quaker Hill in White Creek, about 2.5 miles north of the Hoosick River. He was born April 19, 1688, to Benoni and Elizabeth, widow of Sybert Van Schaik, Van Corlaer. On September 23, 1743, he married Mary Lake of Middlesex County, New Jersey, and was joined in his fur trading enterprise by his 4 brothers-in-law, John, Thomas, James, and Nicholas Lake. He and his associates subsequently took title through an Indian deed and a king's grant to 5,000 acres of the surrounding land, including that on which the trading post stands. The name of Van Corlaer is emblazoned upon the pages of the colonial history of New Netherlands in New York. The grandfather of the White Creek settler was not only the founder of the city of Schenectady in 1661, but earlier, 1630 to 42, was commissary general and superintendent of the colony of Rensselaerwijk, as well as the agent for the Indian affairs of that colony. He was the Indians' great friend, and they were all his friends. The following quotation from Cadwallader Colden's History of the Five Nations merits reiteration here. He, Van Corlaer, had a mighty influence over the Indians, and it is from him and in remembrance of his merit that all governors of New York are called Corlaer by the Indians to this day, 1738, though he himself was never governor. He rescued the Jesuit, Father Isaac Jogues, from the Mohawks on 2 separate occasions, and he befriended a party of French under Courcelles, the Governor-General of Canada, who had set out to attack the Mohawks, but who, unused to snowshoes in the severe cold, were nearly dead of cold and hunger when they appeared near Schenectady, so that had not Van Corlaer intervened and contrived their escape and supplied them with provisions, they would have fallen victim to the Iroquois or perished from the elements. To quote Colden further, the French governor, in order to reward so signal a service, invited Corlaer to Canada, but as he went through the Great Lake which lies to the northward of Albany, his canoe was overset and he was drowned, and from this accident that lake has ever since been called Corlaer's Lake by the people of New York. There is a rock in this lake on which the waves dash and fly up to a great height when the wind blows hard. The Indians believe that an old Indian lives under this rock, who has the power of the winds, and therefore as they pass it and their voyage is over, they always throw a pipe or some other small present to this old Indian, and pray for a favorable wind. The English that pass with them sometimes laugh at them, but they are sure to be told of Corlaer's death. Your great countryman Corlaer, they say, as he passed by this rock, jested at our fathers, making presents to this old Indian, and in derision turned up his backside, but this affront cost him his life. The actual place of Corlaer's death in Lake Champlain was near Split Rock, now Pern Bay, Essex County, New York. The lake was known by Corlaer's name until the year 1760. Benoni, father of the White Creek settler, was the only child of record of the illustrious grandfather. His mother was Amiki Shates, the daughter of the dominie at Beaverwick. The circumstances of Benoni's birth are set forth in the council minutes of the period. Benoni took the father's name and became more or less prominent at Albany during the years between 1688 and 1694. From all this, it should be clear to the reader that the Arent Van Corlaer who settled in White Creek was indeed the scion of a colonial New York family of distinction. In his dealings with the Indians, his name alone won him spontaneous acceptance, and brought him their confidence, trust, and loyalty. The red men, be it remembered, were at this time calling the colonial governor's brother Corlaer out of respect to the memory of his illustrious grandfather. For a trader located on the outermost fringe of a perilous frontier, such friendship was essential to survival. Van Corlaer's trading post was admirably situated along the trail to the Pomponic village of the Pequot Mawihu, and not far from the Scaticoke-Teoshoke village, which lay along the Hoosic River a few miles to the south. There was a period of several years' duration during which a very considerable number of fur traders, including Van Corlaer and his associates, were handicapped in their operations by government interference. Says Claude Nelson Macmillan in his book A History of My People and Yours, the then governor of the colony of New York would grant only a limited number of hunting and trapping licenses. It is quite apparent that he expected a part of the income from this trapping and hunting so that all furs must be sold either at Albany or in New York. There developed, as by necessity, a plan for outwitting such measures. So these trappers would load their canoes just below Albany, paddle down the west bank of the Hudson River, passing New York quietly in the dark, and on to New Jersey, which thus became a market for furs, and where the trappers could secure a fair price for their labor without any kickback to the New York governor. By 1760, the colonial government had restricted the fur trade to only 3 licenses. The Lakes and Van Corlaer were not licensed, but they appeared to have carried on trade in spite of this from their New Jersey headquarters, as did many others. The practice was to come upriver by boat and anchor just below Albany, where in the cover of darkness the boats were loaded by faithful Indian helpers, who conveyed the pelts from the Hoosic St. Croix post. While Van Corlaer and his associates were busy plying their Indian trade, the settlement of the Hoosic Patent to the south of them was proceeding apace. In the division of the lands of the Hoosic Grant, Cornelius Van Ness, his cousin Philip Van Ness, and the heirs of Maria Van Rensselaer came into possession of that part of the patent contained in White Creek. The Van Nesses retained manorial rights and were called the patroons of the Lower Hoosic. Settlers came onto their lands as tenants or sharecroppers, after the old world feudal fashion. Cornelius Van Ness's St. Croix Manor embraced the land along the Hoosic between the Elkill and the Little White Creek, while his cousin Philip's manor, known as Teoshoke, followed the north bank of the river from the Elkill to Buskirks and beyond. The patroons encouraged a mixed tenantry, and in the years immediately following Van Corlaer's coming, a considerable settlement sprang up with immigrants pushing up from Albany, Schenectady, Lansingburg, and elsewhere. Teoshoke Village, now Buskirks, became a center for trade, and had its sawmill, blacksmith shop, gristmill, and church. The St. Croix settlement flourished also during this time, and it is said that by 1742 a quaint Dutch village had sprung up around the Van Ness mansion, which consisted of a number of dwellings, houses for tenants and slaves, a schoolhouse, ashery, store, blacksmith shop and wagon shop, and tannery. The leases between the patroon and his tenants revealed that the crossroads of the St. Croix Manor connected with the Great Road, since known as the Cambridge Turnpike. A partial list of the tenants by name who located in the Teoshoke Manor during this time, some of whom were within White Creek, includes the following: Johannes Quackenbush, Nicholas Grosbeck, Peter Veely, Johannes Busker, Walter Van Vecken, and Louis Van Wert. Those who located in the White Creek portion of the St. Croix Manor were families by the name of Defonda, Fort, Bovey, Van Rensselaer, Vandenberg, and Searles. The period between 1671 and 1744 was an interval of peace in the Hoosic Valley for white man and Indian alike. As a result, great progress had been made in settlement, the wilderness was tamed, and frontier extended. The vicious assault on Schenectady in February 1690, when a party of French and Indians slew the inhabitants and burned the town, kept the Hoosic Valley settlers mindful of the ever-present menace of the French provinces to the north, but that raid was the only really alarming incident during these years. The English officials at Albany had employed a mixed band of Mohawk and Hoosic Indians to continually scout the war trail leading to Canada. These scouts had taken it upon themselves to negotiate a pact with their kindred at St. Francis, under the Canadian Jesuits, not to molest each other's domains, so that the scalping forays of the Canadians during that time were directed toward the New England settlements in Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire. But now the storm clouds were gathering anew. In 1744, war broke out in Europe between England and France, and as we return to our next chapter, we shall see how this conflict involved America and those early White Creek and Hoosic Valley settlers. I've got a few notes and comments on Chapter 5 and Arent van Corlaer. He was born on April 19, 1688, so he would have been 21 in 1709, not 19. Sandcoik was the central community at the time, but there is one record that says Arent settled in Mapletown, East Hoosic, rather than Sandcoik. There is, however, no documentation for that. There was no R in the name Sandcoik, as it is almost certainly Mohican in origin, and they did not have an R sound in their language. The St. Croix mission story is remotely possible, but very doubtful. Sandcoik, just west of North Hoosic, New York, ended up in the town of Hoosic, Rensselaer County, not in White Creek. The trading post was built in 1711 in White Creek, likely along the trail from Sandcoik to Pumpkin Hook. It was probably not originally a place of residence, but was only manned during the trading season. Later on, one of the Lakes lived there, and there is a small lake cemetery on the site. Arent probably spent his winters in Albany or down in New Jersey. After acquiring furs, he transported them to New Jersey in the summer, as mentioned. It was there he met and married Mary Lake in 1743. Her brothers joined him in the fur trade. Arent and Maria had 6 children, some born in New Jersey. Arent died January 3, 1795, at the young age of 106. He is buried in the cemetery at Sandcoik under his anglicized name of Arent van Corlaer. If I recollect right, he was buried closer to the road, but in an agreement to preserve the cemetery, his gravestone was moved back into what now compromises the cemetery to free up the farmer's field. I could be wrong on that, it was a long time ago, but I don't think so. Teashok was originally on the north side of the river across from Buskirk, but after Martin van Buskirk settled on the south and built a bridge at the ford, the businesses and name migrated across. The Dutch church also abandoned their building at Sandcoik and moved to Buskirk, building a new building.